Hello everybody and welcome. Today I've gotten a request to run through the /execute command, which is probably my favorite command in all of Minecraft. So I'm going to be running through some of the best applications of this command, from my experience at least. Just like the last video, I'm going to have clickable timestamps in the description if you did want to jump ahead to a particular thing. But otherwise, I hope you learned something new and let me know what you want to see next in the comments. Now before I get into anything crazy, it's important that you understand when to use /execute. /execute command allows you to do three main things. It, for one, allows you to test if a condition is being met. It allows you to, secondly, run a command through the lens of another entity. And third, it allows you to store important information that might be useful for another command. Now, if those three things sound confusing, don't worry, I'm going to show you how to use them in this video. Let's say I wanted to test whenever the player puts a diamond block on top of this gold block. And when that condition is met, I want it to say a message. Well, very simply put, I can put a command block down and say execute if block on this coordinate, which a quick way to grab chords if you don't know is put a block where you want and press F3 plus I, and it'll just copy to your clipboard a set block with the chords. So I'm going to do execute if block, diamond block, execute if the block on this coordinate is a diamond block, run say yay. I'll put this on repeat, always active, so every tick it's going to be testing to see if that's a diamond block. See, if I put a diamond block, I'm starting to get yay messages in the chat. Now, expanding on that same thing, we could even test to see if a condition is not being met. So if I put down another command block here and say execute unless the block under chords is a diamond block, run say boo, always active, repeat. So as you can see, what our execute command is saying is unless there's a block on these coordinates that's diamond, it's gonna do this thing. But this command block is saying execute if there is a block there, then it's going to do this thing until I put a diamond block and it switches to yay. But if I break it again, it switches back to boo. Now the next thing I want to talk about is using the execute as. So I did briefly go over this in my last video, though I'll expand on a little bit here. Let's say I'm making some sort of map where I want to, at each player that's on my map, do something. For instance, let's say I want to have particles happening at each player that's on my map. Using /execute, I can execute as at A, which, as I mentioned in my last video, at A is a target selector for all players. So executing as every player at self. This little chain of text right here is probably one of the most common ways I use /execute. What this is essentially saying is executing through the lens of every player at their position. So now whatever follows in the rest of this command is going to be happening positioned as every player. You're going to run the command and you can just put whatever you want here, particle, flame, repeat, always active. And now at the position of every player, it's running this flame particle. For example, if I do execute as at a game mode equals creative, so I'm going to execute as every player that's in the creative game mode, run particle, flame. So now I'm in survival mode and you can see I have no particles on me. However, this command block is testing for the condition that each player is in creative. So if I switch my game mode to creative, now I get the flame particle back. Now another really useful way to use execute is to test if a player or an entity is within a certain bounding box. This is another really useful trick for making a map if you want to test if a player has made it to a certain key point. And the way we're going to test if an entity is within a certain bounding box is we're going to choose the very corner of the area we want to test. So this corner here. Grab the coordinates of this corner. And essentially we want to know from this corner how far out in the X direction, how far out in the Z direction, and how far out in the Y direction do we want our bounding box to be. And in terms of the execute command, that's going to look something like this. Execute as at A. You're going to set the X equals coordinate, comma, Y equals, Z equals. So that's the X equals, Y equals, and Z equals is our corner coordinates. Next, DX equals. DX is going to be our change in the X direction. So from this corner, our DX is going to be the value of how much we go out for our bounding box. So in the positive X direction, my box goes 1, 2, 3 blocks out. So I'm going to put a 3 here. In the DY direction, we go 1, 2 blocks up. And keep in mind, it's counting the coordinate at the feet of your player, that coordinate. So I'm going to put a 2 here. And in the DZ direction, notice I'm now facing the negative coordinate. It goes out -1, -2, -3, -4 is -4. At self, run particle flame, always active, repeat. And now if I enter my bounding box, I will get this flame particle. The second I leave it, it goes away. The second I re-enter, it comes back. Now the fourth most useful way to use the execute command is the store result. Now for this I am going to be making use of the scoreboard command. Don't have previous knowledge of, that's fine. I could take another video to explain the scoreboard command. Now I'm just going to kind of make use of it, so don't worry about that if it's too confusing. So for execute store, essentially what we're going to do is we're going to run a command that's going to give us data, and we're going to store it into a scoreboard. We can run a command if the data we collect matches something we want, basically. So for example, let's say I'm going to execute store result. So it's going to store the result of the command we're about to run into a score for myself, and just make a scoreboard with some name you want. Mine will be John. Run data get entity for myself, position 0, which is my X, and we're just going to put repeat always active. And now, as you can see on my sidebar, I have a scoreboard that's constantly updating my X position. As I move in the negative X here, my negative score will go up. And that's a really useful thing, because using our conditional execute command I mentioned earlier, can now test if the player is at a certain X position we might want. For example, if I do execute if entity at A scores equal the name of your scoreboard, let's say -40, and I'm going to do 2 dots at the end. And what these 2 dots mean is greater than or equal to. So anything greater than or equal to 40, execute if our score is anything greater than or equal to 40 at that certain entity with that score. Run particle flame. So now as you can see, I'm going to walk up to the 40, and it's greater than or equal to, so even on the -40 coordinate, I get this particle. And for all other coordinates past the -40, which are greater than -40, I get the particle. Now, using a relatively new command in Minecraft, the /random command, and combining that with the execute store result command, we can basically store a random number into a scoreboard. And using our conditional execute command, we can execute if that random number matches a certain number we want. Essentially, we can use execute to make random events occur. Now what this looks like is I'll do execute store result score for myself and my scoreboard, run random value, and I'll give it a set. We'll say a random value between 1 and 10. So you'll see that every time I activate this command, I'm going to get a random number between 1 and 10. Being able to utilize random in Minecraft is honestly one of the most useful things ever for map creation. A few months ago, I was working on a lethal company map in Minecraft using the /random and execute command. And as you can see, it can get really complicated. But essentially, using the /random store result, I'm able to create random pathing and random generation, which is perfect for a map like this. Now, getting to a level where you're able to come up with things and systems this complicated takes many years of practice. Obviously, if you're new to this kind of thing, don't expect to be able to come up with something like this so easily. I mean, even for myself, I'm still learning new things every day, and it's very hard to learn it all so quickly, especially from a short video like this. However, the best way I would recommend to learn is just messing around. I mean, even taking some of the things you may have learned from this video and just loading into a new world and playing around with some cool things or cool ideas is the best way to practice. And again, if you have any questions or anything else you might need help with, feel free to leave a comment down below or even reach out to me. I'll leave my Discord in the description. I'm always happy to help people with commands and other programming things. But otherwise, yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.